Hello, I'm Amit Karmi. I'm the co-founder and the CEO at Set. I am here in this beautiful weather in London to understand what the hell our mobile game studios are doing with this thing called AI. I am personally obsessed about discovering the unfiltered truth of what the OGs of the mobile games industries are thinking and doing with AI, and most importantly, what are their biggest secrets of success in this new era of intelligence. This is Unpredictable Hits, the show for marketing and UA people around the globe to stay sharp, climb higher, and most importantly, don't get left behind in this new era of AI. Let's go. So John, it's great to have you here, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's amazing. First of all, I'm a big fan of you and Jagex, and
Shut up.
I had to say it for the camera.
No, it's not real.
And I think you have a very unique story, starting at Jagex, moving to the investment roles and finance to LVP, then being actually an executive at Huge Games, leading the strategy, going back to the roots of finance, CVC, capitals, and board member of Jagex, and now you're doing every gamer dream. And I assume it was your dream back then when I guess you're still playing, the CEO of Jagex. Can you maybe tell us a bit about your unique story?
I think you just have, right? I mean, that's the story.
Why games, man? Why games?
Why games? So games was not something I expected to be doing. I expected to be going into banking, whatever else. Finance, probably. I was good at maths. I was good at physics. These were the things that I thought would lead me into a career. And at the time that I ended up in my first job, it was on the back of a very speculative application, let's say. Late night thinking, wouldn't it be amazing to work for this company that made a game that I've played at that time for 10-ish years? And didn't think anything would come for it. And here we are, like 10 years later, and I've worked at the company, sold the company, invested in the company, and now running the company. So
how, when you work at Huge, which is a very different company than Jagex today, what do you think are the main learnings you gain from Huge and implement, and maybe now in Jagex or your investment strategy?
Yeah, it's a good question. They're totally different businesses, right? Like totally different, culturally different, economically very different. The kind of skills that are needed to run it are quite different for a company like Huge. It's a lot about how smart and effective you can be on user acquisition, and then how you can monetize players quite aggressively. For a company like Jagex, particularly for old school RuneScape and RuneScape 3, it's much less about aggressive user acquisition, and we'll get there and we'll talk a bit about this. It's much more about how you preserve and grow a community. So I think with Jagex, ultimately, you're not running sort of IP company necessarily. You're not running a brand company. You're not running a UA business model. What you're really running is a community, and that feels a lot more like government than game development.
Wow.
I think if you're going to get it right. And that's, I think, what's been done very well by my predecessor over the years. My predecessor was in the CEO role for about 8 years. I think what he did well was manage the communities that we have like governments and try and do right by players, which isn't always the case in mobile gaming.
Oh, same.
So totally different.
Why did you join Jagex as the CEO? What is the reason behind that?
I think part of it is what you said. It's the dream, right? Like you grow up playing this game.
It's my first game that I have ever played.
Me too.
It's an insane game.
And it's
an
the
amazing
same for
game.
half the people I speak with, right?
It's a few hundreds of millions, right? The community at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've had more than 100 million players. This is true. The company's done more than 3 billion in lifetime revenue. And right now there's about 1.5 million unique subscribers every day.
Wow.
Which is up around 300,000 unique subscribers versus March. So it's growing very quickly.
Wow.
But to answer your question, it's an opportunity of a lifetime, right? I mean, I'd seen this business when I worked here the first time for 4 or 5 years. I'd seen it from the inside and seen what it was like to run a sale process with that business at that time. And I'd obviously seen as a player what RuneScape and Jagex were for 20 years. And as a buyer working with the CVC team and the Haveli team who bought the company in early of last year. And so I'd seen it from all these different angles and getting closer and closer to the business again over the past couple of years. I didn't expect this opportunity to come up, but when it did, felt like the right time.
Wow, amazing. Yeah. And today, like Jagex, it's a company, 25 years, legacy games. People, I assume, that work in Jagex for a very long time. You have this kind of them. What is the culture in Jagex?
Yeah, the culture is an interesting one. I think the best way to describe it is that most of the people who come to work at Jagex and work on RuneScape go home and play RuneScape on their evenings, right? So they were players before they came, they're players while they work here, and they'll probably be players later in life too. And so you can imagine what kind of culture that builds. But I think that it's special and it's alchemical, because what it means is the people who are working all day, every day, are the same people who have to deal with the challenges and the benefits and the good deliveries as soon as they go home or on a weekend. And so the closeness of our developers, designers, general employee base with our products, I think is pretty unparalleled. I think that's why it's been so successful for the last 20 years.
Did you see any cultural changes? I assume Jagex started, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. What has been changing in terms of culture for Jagex?
Yeah, the company's had a few different leaders over the time. So you've also got to remember that in 20 years, the average player has grown by about 20 years in age, right? So they started when they were 11 or 12.
I started when I was 7. Now I'm 27.
I'm a few years older than you. And I started when I was about 5 years older than you, about 12. And now I'm 32. And so, the reality is the business has had to change culturally because our customers have gone from 11 to 31 in that period, right? So the people you're speaking to are adults. They're smart. They get it. And so the culture of the company has had to change to reflect the player base that we have too. And so when I think about how the company was run 20 years ago, a lot more decisions were made on behalf of players in their best interest, sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. Today, the decisions are made much more frequently by the community of adults that exist within our games.
Wow.
And so it's much more give and take than just give now, I would suggest.
How does it look like practically when you're saying it's like a community-driven product development?
Yeah.
How do you gain these insights practically with them consistently?
Yeah, so we're the extreme version of community-driven product development. So there is no feature that gets released in old school RuneScape, not a single one, unless it passes a poll in game.
Wow.
And that poll threshold is not 50%, it's 70%.
Wow.
Which is good for our community because it means that they have a great degree of control, pretty much unparalleled degree of control in our industry at least, over what happens in the game. And it's also great because it means that we avoid some of the more difficult mistakes, or more challenging mistakes that get made, because generally we've got a lot of players on side whenever we do anything of scale. The challenge as a development team is that you very rarely get the opportunity to surprise and delight the player base in old school RuneScape, because if you know everything that's coming, how do you still manufacture that magic occasionally? And we have ways to do that, and we're certainly building more ways to do that.
Now, with the new launch, I assume it was the community went crazy with the Dragonwilds.
With Dragonwilds, yes, there's a whole separate game. But in old school and RuneScape 3, there are things that are happening that are a bit different to what used to happen. Some time-limited game modes, things that don't involve new content in the core games, but still are very exciting, drive a ton of hype, and also can serve as those surprise and delight moments. So we're trying to build those into the armory. Dragonwilds has obviously done tremendously well. I think it's just surpassed 900,000 units sold.
Wow.
Approaching 1 million, and that's just for the early access product. So next year when we release in full, there's a lot of big expectations.
It's not the full launch.
No, that was just the early access
just
launch. Exactly. And so we're the scope of investment going into that game since that success has grown exponentially. So we're hiring super aggressively for that team. There's a ton that is taking shape that looks incredible. It's hard, right? With a RuneScape audience who are used to seeing updates every week, it can be quite hard to find the balance between keeping players happy, but also developing to an appropriate timeline for a premium product launch. And so at the moment, we're sort of in that gray area between players from a RuneScape background expecting weekly updates or monthly updates, and development of a full game from early access not running in the same cadence. And so that can be a point of friction, but I think next year's release is going to be, it should be a real sort of cake topper.
Why do you think Dragonwilds early launch was so successful? You have been working it for a while, right?
Yeah, this has been in development long before I joined the business. This has been underway for almost 3 years now. Wow. I think something around that. And the game, I think, why did it do so well? I think there's a few reasons. The first thing is it's fundamentally fun and it's good. And if you're a RuneScape player, it is recognizable as a RuneScape product, which hasn't always been the case with historical releases. There's also this strength of community that sits within particularly old school RuneScape, but also RuneScape 3. That means that there's such a high affinity for the universes of RuneScape and the IP that they've known and loved oftentimes for many, many years, if not decades, that if a new RuneScape product launches and it's wearing the brand on its back, it gets at least more than a cursory level of interest. And then that combined with the game actually being fun and a really solid play experience, albeit in early access state, I think was enough encouragement to see just as many units sell as have. And so my expectation, my ambition, the team's ambition is that this time next year we'll be looking at a full content launch that packages that hype with a full product that isn't just part complete and gets us some pretty good headlines.
It's amazing, man. Yeah. Do you see players that from the old RuneScape that are playing Dragonwilds, like, and you can track this stuff as well?
Yeah, pretty well.
What are the critics like? Do they have any like negative feedback, positive feedback? Well, what the old players think at the moment?
Yeah, sort of like I was mentioning, the old players are used to receiving an update every week, and for a product like a survival product on Steam, a sort of what used to be called a box product, we're not delivering those weekly updates at the same cadence as old school RuneScape has for the last 10 or so years, and RuneScape 3 has for its last 20 years. And so I think the critique point is this isn't being developed fast enough. What isn't very visible is behind the scenes, we've got a bigger team than ever, with more resources arriving, more investment than ever before. Like, this pace of development is insane in Dragonwilds. As somebody who sees behind the scenes every week, it genuinely is very impressive. But if you're an outside player, it's hard to see that because you're measuring progress by weekly updates rather than how much is being put in.
Wow, and so, personally, as the CEO, how do you divide your focus? No, it's something like focus also in our case. It's, I don't know, the most precious thing as an executive. Yeah. How do you divide this focus between this new launch game to the existing game that, you know, is insane, generating tons of money, growing, like you said, consistently? So how do you do that personally?
Yeah, so I've got an amazing team, right? And so beneath me, I have an SVP product, a guy called James Dabrowski, who is a superstar, ex-CCP, worked on EVE, very, very strong. And he is responsible for product at the business. And so his job is split 30-30-30-ish between old school RuneScape, RuneScape 3 and Dragonwilds. His job is to oversee the executive producer layer. And each game has one EP. But within my team, I also have obviously a CMO who's very strong, who's helping with go-to-market. So I have eyes and ears everywhere within my team. So my job's a little simpler. I think there are times in each product's life where it's going to require more focus than less. So at the moment, we're going through this huge transformation to our microtransactions layer within RuneScape 3. So that's taking up way more time than it might normally do. We're also doing one of the biggest releases ever released in old school RuneScape coming later this year. And that is, that's also sucking up a lot of my attention for obvious reasons. And then day to day, I've got a team to manage the same as most people do. And I've got a board to manage the same as most people do. And occasionally a podcast in central London. So it's kind of the split.
Amazing, man. Yeah. So I don't know if you know, but the name of the show is Unpredictable Hits. The reason behind that is because you can predict in entertainment and fun, you can predict what will really work. And this is, it said something, you know, that we're trying to solve and to improve the prediction. Because of that, we are celebrating as a company hits. RuneScape is a hit game, but for you specifically, we thought about a hit movie that would suit you well, and we have a present for you. The movie is The Wolf of Wall Street, and we have for you...
Oh no, I don't know if I'm flattered or offended.
And we have for you The Wolf of Gaming, and this is you.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you.
It looks good, man. It looks good. You look good. It suits you well.
Does. The Wolf of Gaming. I look in real life. I'll say this. I'm grateful. I know exactly where that's going on my wall. So thank you very much.
Put it here now. And now we will play a little game. We have a few. That's it. And after that, we're going back to the conversation. Okay, but we have a few cards here. Okay. We have questions. I don't know what the questions are. You can just pick one, read it, and then answer.
Okay, so I'm asking myself the question.
You're asking yourself the question and then answering yourself.
Okay, how are you so handsome? Oh, no, sorry. No,
I swear to God, wait, John.
Yeah?
I wanted to write it. And Daniela, our brand and content lead, didn't want. But
well, Daniela is the only person standing between you and I and a problematic future, so that's good. You've been a player, a VC, an exec, and now the face of Jagex. Which version of Jon taught you the hardest lessons? Oh, God, how do I answer that?
Wow.
Wow. I would say the executive roles are hard. They've all been quite different in the way that they're hard. I'd say working with the team at CVC was one of the greatest sort of thrills of my professional career. The sort of intelligence and speed of movement and curiosity and humility in that room was taught me a lot. I think as a sitting executive at huge games, it certainly taught me a lot about being scrappy and dealing with 80-20 decisions rather than 100% clarity and doing hard things, such as an IPO or a big turnaround, or there's been a few of those in my career that have taught me a lot. Jagex, I think, is different to everything else I've ever done. Historically, I can sort of measure my career by getting a big deal done or closing a fundraise or listing a public company or buying another business or selling a business or something like this. And so you can measure my career in chapters. Jagex isn't like that. It doesn't have a one and done moment where you've achieved the big thing or you're running a sale process or something. It's much more of a marathon. And it's also totally different culturally to anything that I'd done before besides working at Jagex the first time. So I think that is currently teaching me much more on a day-to-day basis than any other job has. And that's strange because it's also the place that I feel most familiarity with, right? Like a lot of the people I recognize from 10 years ago, the players I certainly recognize, the games I recognize better than anything, the building I work in is the same one from 10 years ago. And so whilst it feels familiar, the rate of learning for all of us in this moment as we go through such a big transformation, I think is unparalleled.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's humbling.
It was a great answer to a very tough question.
Answer.
Let's choose another one, John.
Okay,
You're on fire. You're on fire.
Okay. In your journey, what's one belief you carried for years that later had to completely unlearn?
Oh my God.
And who paid the price while you were still holding on to it? Jeez. Oh, that's so deep. It's like, for anybody watching, it's like barely the afternoon here, and this is philosophy. In my journey, what's one belief that I carried for years that you can later had to completely unlearn? I think one naive belief that I had in the earlier parts of my life, particularly coming from quite a quantitative background, was that most things in life were solvable, and most of the challenges I face day to day now are not solvable challenges. If they were, they would have been solved.
Wow.
They are grey, they're murky, they're amorphous. They relate to emotion and sentiment and feeling, and much less to do with the optimal price point or the optimal MTX package or the optimal UA campaign. They're much grayer than that. And I think that is a hard thing to find comfort in if you've progressed through most of your career on the back of being very strong analytically or quantitatively or logically. Suddenly it's a lot more soft around you in terms of the problem space. So that's something that I've learned is, not everything is solvable. And the stuff that is solvable is often much less important than the stuff that isn't. Who paid the price while I was holding on to it? Oh, God. There's a joke in there about ex-girlfriends probably, but I honestly don't know. That's something that I will certainly give more time to once we're a bit more bedded in at Jagex.
But actually, it's something very interesting you said about the unsolvable task. I assume that it's an important learning, but I assume you're still trying to solve these huge problems. And how do you know if a problem is solvable or not today?
I mean, they normally present as either something that requires a resolution. So, for example, how many players can we expect to be in the ecosystem tomorrow is mostly solvable, at least on the surface. But at some point, you get to the decision flow. You look at the retention curves of the existing cohorts. You look at the new player acquisition profile and project that out till tomorrow. You look at any features that are likely to affect retention curves or daily engagement rates. You look at what day of the week it's going to be, whether Jupiter's in retrograde. You can add all of these inputs, right, to try and get to a position where you've solved for it. But ultimately, beneath all of that, how many players playing tomorrow is really about how many players feel like playing tomorrow. And as soon as you get to that layer, it becomes a lot more about, are people net happy? Which parts of the player base are not so happy? Why are they not so happy? What's likely to trigger their excitement tomorrow? Is tomorrow even a relevant day to be trying to drive excitement, or would that be better served for next Wednesday? All of that is really hard to solve. And for a business like ours, with products like ours, it's so much more, like I mentioned, about community management than it is about solving for the sort of calculus of what to do. And if you're trying to figure out the best time to drive the most excitement for a new feature that's about to release, that's a lot more about how you feel than what you see.
Oh, man. That was
philosophy.
That was deep.
It was deep. It was too deep for me at this point in the day. But
no, it was great.
What I have.
If you want, we can choose another one. The last one. Let's choose the last one.
Okay.
You can have both and choose.
I'll take them both.
Which one you prefer? I will read the last one that you didn't choose.
There's one that comes to mind for me. So what is one golden piece of advice you've received that you secretly kept with you? It's not much of a secret because I talk about it all the time with my team. I think if you're going to be aggressive, be all the way aggressive. And what I mean by that is instead of taking one big swing, the best way to take one big swing is to take 9 others, right? So if you're going to bet the house on something, that will seem like aggression, or you're going to bet on yourself for one big thing that must come off. That seems like aggression, but it's not a very smart type of aggression. I think betting on 10 things in a way that you don't feel comfortable with, knowing that you need to be able to get 6 or 7 of them right in aggregate, is the only sensible way to do this. So for us, that means taking big risks on content, making some hard decisions about team shape size, about roadmap, etc., that might not seem very sensible. They might seem overly aggressive, but as long as they're accompanied by 5 or 6 other quite big swings, with enough timeline, 3-5 years, I think that's the kind of thing that separates what seems like one big swing coming off in retrospect is often the one that did of the 5 that were tried, rather than the one that did of the one that was tried. So one piece of advice I get from my board quite frequently is don't be afraid to be bold, but if you're going to be bold on a few things.
Wow.
Make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I think it's I will try to compare it to the Chinese culture of like the new studios. I also spoke about it with Akin. They know how to double down on things for real. They do a few things at the same time, but when they double down, for example, they're very, very strong in UA activity. They're very strong in, a lot of stuff. But when they do something, it's all the way.
Yeah.
It's all the way without looking right and left, just going to this direction and doing whatever it needs. So yeah, I believe it's interesting. For me, it makes tons of sense. It's contradictive to, people that are saying you should focus on one thing. But sometimes, especially I assume when the company is big, you run, you said 3 games, you have a new game, you have a community you have a lot of very important efforts to run at the same time. So you need to choose the hopefully the most impactful one and to double down on them like crazy. And like you said, I think it's all about the people. Like you have the management team and I assume this is what enabled you to run the company well at the moment.
So far, so good, right? It's only been sort of 6 months or so, but we'll see. I think the important thing with that is that you recognize when you're actually doing 5 bold things and it's not really just one bold thing. So for example, if you're releasing a new product and you're going to change the metagame versus the previous product, and you're going to change the core loop, and you're going to change the graphic style, and you're going to change the way that you do UA, and you're going to focus on K factor instead of marginal ROAS, all of those things seem like 5 big bold steps, but they're actually just one bold risk on one product,
same game,
right? And that's, I think, where it gets hard to separate what you're actually taking swings for versus adding swings to. I think that's a watch out. But yeah, Akin loves those stories about
China.
It can often seem when you look at sort of some of the Chinese hit studios that have come through, like Century and Hungry, and prior to that, Bowler Games, they've done tremendously well in mobile. And if you look at them from the outside in, it looks like they've just made consecutively the right choice after the right choice after the right choice. But I suspect what they've actually done is taken 5 choices, one has worked, 5 choices, one has worked. And that kind of sheer output is the differentiator rather than luck, as it often gets called here in the West.
Amazing. I have a question regarding IP of Jagex, and you work with non-IP games. We can speak about if huge games are IP or not, but you know what is real IP now? How is it differ to when you're making decision when you have such a strong IP compared to not a very strong IP studio?
There's a lot more to lose, a ton more to lose. So it's very rare that our teams ever make big decisions on behalf of our communities without either having it gated in a poll or having the feedback from the community before we do it. Or in most cases, even when we do those things, we do it with the community step by step by step. So sailing is a new skill that's coming to Old School RuneScape later this year.
Oh, wow.
And that has been under development for almost 3 years in total, right? So this is a single feature for a game that has been 3 years in development. It was polled, it passed the poll, so it hit that 70% threshold. And it was the first time Jagex polled a new skill for Old School RuneScape, it failed. The second time...
What was it? Do you remember?
I forget the name of the first skill. There was warding, there was a handful of others. The second time we went through it, failed again.
Wow.
The third time, the community team from the old school RuneScape side worked with the community to work on a brief that was likely to pass a poll, and then staged the process up to even running a poll over a period of about a year. And then for every element that was being folded into the new feature set, the new skill, they also got polled. So by the end of it, there was much more of a community fingerprint on what was being released than a developer fingerprint. And even for us, that was extreme community centricity. And that comes back to the IP question. When you're dealing with a 25-year-old universe that people have literally lived in for 8 hours a day for many years on end, suddenly changing the way that you interact is like banning cars overnight in the UK or in the US. That kind of change can't just be made abruptly, right? There's so much importance and value and sacred ground in the universe that has been built over so much time by so many people that taking flippant risks, in contrast to the being bold advice I just mentioned, is not really viable.
Oh, it does sound like a government.
Totally.
It's insane.
You're dealing with millions of people, right?
No, you created the world where you have
literally
community, you have rules, you have
an economy and currency and syncs and flows and changing dynamics and new enemies and old enemies and new standards. And it is a functioning economy of people. It just is.
Oh, this is insane. So about community now,
it's different to the mobile game thing, where it's
very
like,
different.
Which color should we pick for the new ad?
Not that, but it's. I think we can take it also. We can look at it from the B2B perspective as well. But for mobile games or for games in general, to have a strong community is the dream. Like for everyone, a strong community user base. You have it for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I assume you are looking, to bring also new users. If we're speaking specifically for old RuneScape,
yeah.
How do you view this tension between community engagement and maintenance, kind of, or empowering, improvement, and etc., to new user acquisition efforts?
Yeah, it's really interesting because
you have a new CMO, you said. So
we have a new CMO, and she's doing an extraordinary job. But in our business, community and developers who are close with the community are really the front line, right? So by the time you get to management, sure, I can move pieces around the board and set the direction, but the people doing the most vital work every day are the people who are closest to our community. And that can be our marketeers. It can be our developers who are on X or Reddit on an evening or within our Discords. It can be the community managers who spend all day, every day interfacing with 1 million people at a time. We do more of that than I think almost anybody else. And I genuinely believe that is our key to success. It's the thing that we do best in the world is community management. We're not perfect, but we're sure as hell trying to be. So I think that's a differentiator. As you can imagine, if you followed the logic and said, what I really want to do is bring 100 million new players into this ecosystem right now, what would that do to the existing ecosystem?
This is the question.
Right. And so there is a tension and the balance needs to be found. The great thing about our communities is there's generally so much pride in the communities that exist. There's very little gatekeeping. And so there's a subreddit. My favorite subreddit at the moment on Reddit is one called r/cuteNoobs. And it's new players who come to the game who are obviously identifiable as new because they're a low level and wearing weird gear. And it's image screenshots that higher level players have taken where they're trying to help these and I mean they seem like baby sheep. They're ultimately 35-year-old men, so they're not really baby sheep, but they look this way in game. And so there is this culture that exists that I'm particularly proud of within our products, of like enabling people to come and try without any defensiveness, and that's a rare thing to have. It's one of our biggest tailwinds. So to answer your question, engaging the existing community that we have, working with them, being close to them is the priority. Growing the size of the community is the second priority. But critically, on any given day, about 2/3 of all of the members who come into the ecosystem, subscribers who come into the ecosystem, have been a subscriber at some point previously. So they're lapsed players. About 1/3 are new players or players that we can't identify based on the information they've provided. So even though it seems like this is a legacy game, and it is, the community that we have actually turns over relatively quickly and is frothy. People don't really quit. They just take long breaks. It's a meme, but it's also the truth for us.
Wow. This is
it's a weird sort of challenge,
It's because as a business, you all of the time think about how do I bring new users, new customers all of the time. But the hard part, I think, especially now with AI, if we're taking a high level overview about the world, how it's looked like today, that you can generate stuff faster, whether it's code, apps, games, content. The engagement that you have with your current community and the expansion there might be might the focus should be. And like you've done it because it's so obvious. You have this huge fan base for such a long time. But because to bring new users, it's like we see all of the companies now that, I reached 10 million in ARR in 3 months since developing alone in my garage for 2 hours a day, something like that. And then you check and you see the retention is like, no, but it's for 3 years. And then you say the retention is shit. No one is staying there. And because they're just bring new one, but not focusing on making sure that the existing one are having an amazing experience. And this is something that you say it's the main priority. It's also important to bring new one, but it's not going to damage the existing one. And it's beautiful. I think it's relevant for everyone, not only in games.
I fully agree. If you could name a single tool that you got unbelievably excited about in the last 5 years that you're still using 5 years later and feel sticky and loyal to, I can't name a single tool like that.
I agree.
I can point to games that are like that for me. I can point to brands that are like that for me. I'm a Porsche sucker, and I will be probably until I die. There are watches that I will pledge allegiance to. There are cafes that I will pledge allegiance to. But I can't think of anything that's grown unbelievably excitingly over the last few years that I can't imagine my life without. And I think that the harsh truth in that, at least from my perspective, is great, sticky, valuable things take time to build. They just do. I don't think that can be forced or faked.
Everyone is saying it here, It's all about hard work. And people kind of forgot about it. I think specifically like the Western culture, it's like you need to, it's the same. Execution even matter more now because it's easier to execute. It's a very interesting time period.
I think the world's got it the wrong way around, right? You look at the companies that build sustainable value over many years at a time with loyal fan bases with high inertia. They get valued relatively lowly compared to the new exciting thing. I think we back the wrong horses sometimes. I'm biased, obviously, but I would take one Jagex or one RuneScape any day of the week over a business that's 10 times as big, but is built on the back of the last 12 months of hype.
Wow.
Totally.
I loved it.
Yeah,
I loved
totally.
it. You have very famous players in Jagex. Very famous one. I don't know if we can speak about it, but if we can speak about it.
I don't know. Maybe.
No, specifically. Not specific names, but
okay.
Very famous people from all around the world that everyone knows. How do you think about it in your marketability efforts to utilize this type of stuff?
Yeah, that's you're asking a good question at the right time. Somewhere out there is a camera crew
no, really?
traveling around the US.
No,
yes,
really?
Exactly. So you asked the right question.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, literally breaking news. And I mean, no specifics, obviously, but unsurprisingly, with 100 million lapsed accounts and most people starting when they're between 7 and 12, a lot of those, some proportion of those people go on to be extraordinary professional athletes or musicians or superstars, right? And so we have a few of those. Historically, RuneScape has not been a necessarily cool game. One of the benefits of having a player base that's 32 and not 16 anymore is that they tend to care less about not playing the cool game, especially if you're already a world-renowned athlete or something, or superstar musician. And so I think there is the first opportunity, something that I'm a bit of an advocate for, and this is a pet project more than anything. I think there's an opportunity to sort of poke fun at the fact that this never used to be a cool game, but it became so uncool that it almost became cool. It's zeitgeisty. And I would like to have a moment in time where we take these 30-year-old athletes and musicians and DJs and whatever else, and, have them poke fun at the fact that at the height of coolness, they would never have told anybody that they play old school RuneScape, and yet here we are now. I think there's something in that.
Of course, it's amazing. I want to see it.
Yeah, it's mostly for me. Exactly. Yeah. I just want to see the output.
Well, I believe it will be brilliant.
So we'll see. We'll see. That kind of thing I think has legs, and there's a lot of overlap between our community and sort of early 2000s rock music, and the Linkin Parks of the world were huge at the same time that RuneScape was.
If you have a Linkin Park,
oh god, yeah, no promises there. But if you know a way to make that happen, I'd be very grateful. But that kind of thing, I think, stays at the back of my mind when I'm trying to fall asleep for sure.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
And we know that RuneScape also for me is very famous and well-known on PC. I know that you have also a mobile version.
We do.
Can you tell us a bit about how do you view the mobile game activity for RuneScape today?
Yeah, of course. So
and the future of it also.
Absolutely.
What is your vision though?
So I think think it's important to say out loud to begin with that the mobile products that we have are just another way to access the existing universe of RuneScape and old school RuneScape. So you can download the app and you can play on your account in the same server as you would at home on your PC. They're not built as dedicated games that have a dedicated user experience tailored for mobile. They are optimized so that the process of playing a PC game via your phone is less bad than it could be. But there is so much opportunity to make what we have more seamless, higher quality, smoother, lower friction. So to take this back into the mobile realm for a minute, one of the things that I think I hope to bring with me and via my CMO, who's extraordinary, is some best practices from mobile user acquisition to Jagex. I mean, if you're viewing a search ad or you're viewing almost any ad in today's ecosystem, you're almost certainly viewing it on a phone. And if we recognize that most people trying to play our games, particularly if the last time you played was 10 years ago, are trying to do so natively via phone, like we need to recognize that needs to be optimized and focused on and made simpler. Truthfully, the process of becoming a member, particularly for old school or RuneScape 3, via your phone, having not played in 10 years, is not a good experience. And that's something that I think most of our community knows, that our team definitely knows. And so I would like to put some focus on that, and that will help us to then be able to spread the net and utilize our advertisements more effectively.
Do you believe there is a place in the world for a mobile game that is, I don't know, inspired by RuneScape or something that providing the same experience that comes from the Jagex culture and vision that will bring totally new users that are not playing RuneScape, that will never play RuneScape because I don't know why, but will play this mobile game that comes from the Jagex culture?
That's interesting. I mean, yes is the answer. For a long time, I've wanted to see a really good MMO on mobile, or even like a raid sort of environment on mobile. It could be done well. We see that in China, some of the biggest games that have ever been built on mobile are MMOs or MMORPGs. And so there is no reason why we couldn't make it work here, even if culturally we haven't grown up on the same level of mobile game sophistication. So the answer, I think, is yes. It's not something that we're actively focusing on, but as a player, I would love to see that product come to life at some point for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
It will be very interesting the time that if it will happen.
Yeah.
Wow, it will be another big challenge. Like we know that you love challenges, Jon.
Yeah,
so.
No, we do. We all do. Exactly.
You're getting tired. You will be tired at
well, I don't know about this.
Yeah. You're hungry. You're hungry.
That's it. I'm still a young guy.
Perfect. And I have let's speak about the most the best buzzword there is today, which is 2 letters, AI.
Okay.
How do you view AI in game development? And then we will speak a bit how AI has been involved in Jagex. But what is your general perception about AI at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's recognizing the audience that I'm speaking to here. I think it's built a lot of excitement for a lot of good reasons. I think the perpetual question for me is how much of this translates to what you might call alpha, right? If everybody gets better at doing something, that's great. But really the only benefit, the only source of alpha is doing it more quickly than the guy next to you. Because that's where you're going to find your edge. It might help you to outbid on audiences a little bit. It might help you to outbid based on creative optimization a little bit. It might help you to set better bidding floors. It might help you to set better retention progression curves or dynamic difficulty curves, or it might help with translation. But if you zoom out 5 or 10 years, you can assume that almost everybody left playing the game, as in developing games like this, will be doing those similar things. And so the true source of advantage doesn't really sit with any game developer at that point in time. I think for the next few years, you can certainly leap ahead of your competition by doing it more fast and more efficaciously and embracing tools like many studios currently are. But in 5 or 10 years, do I think any one of the tools that are currently providing advantage are still going to provide that advantage? My gut says probably not at the top of the market. So if you're going to utilize AI, it better be done in a bespoke way that allows you to perform differently in a way that only you can and your studio can for your players. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself accelerating towards the next parity point where everybody has access to the same set of tools.
Wow.
So the stuff that gets me interested is how unique applications of AI can be done in such a way that even if your competitors tried to copy it, it wouldn't really mean anything to them. That's a much harder question to answer, I think.
And how, with such a big company like Jagex, I don't know how big it is in terms, people, but, big in terms of culture and history.
Yeah.
How do you implement AI in this type of company?
Yeah, so I only have my view that I can speak to, but I don't believe that Jagex is a great fit for having AI producing its content that players play or its advertisements that players see. The reason being is, as we've already discussed, Jagex and its games are really about governing communities, right? They're governmental. And so imagine that, the existing prime minister was replaced by a very well-educated chatbot. There'll be some who would love that. I don't know how well it would work for the medium or long term. Our games are intrinsically human, are intrinsically artisanal, and they have a sense of humor baked throughout them that's a little bit like Monty Python. And so you can ask a GPT equivalent product to produce in the style of Monty Python the storyline for a quest. And it might sound great in isolation, but if the next 100 quests you produce are all done in the same way, and I know, for reasons that are quite hard to describe in language, that it is not going to feel the same in aggregate as the storylines produced by the person who has produced the previous 100 in their tone, in their voice, based on local niche humor that has a lot of feeling and character to it. So I think it's not useful for producing the content that our players will see. So that's a hard line for me. Where I think it is useful is making the ways of working more effective. So Jagex has, way back 20 plus years ago, the founder of Jagex, one of the founders, a guy called Andrew Gower, he was responsible for the production of a dedicated, unique, bespoke programming language called RuneScript. But then
it's so cool. You're saying it like that, but it's so cool.
It was cool then. 20 years later, it's like cool. Something we have to manage, right? So like the world has moved on a little bit.
I love it.
And our community is familiar with the phrase spaghetti code, and that's often used as like an excuse for why we can't do things as fast as we can. The challenge with RuneScript is that there's only like 8 people in the world that can write it, right? And so we've done our best to make sure that not too much of our business and our games is tied to the nature of RuneScript. And there's a whole technology suite built on top of RuneScript as well, which is also incredibly valuable, but also hard to replicate and use. One thing that is possible that I've seen for the first time recently is Python to RuneScript abstraction via AI. Which means that no longer are there 8 people who can interact with certain parts of our game engines. There are now millions of people that in theory could do that. Now, we're not quite at the point yet where we can just say nobody needs to understand RuneScript, but these flashes of encouragement suggest that the ways that we work and what becomes possible in what we deliver in a very handcrafted way could be growing in the way that they're delivered and the speed at which they arrive. I think that for us is the best way to use AI. It's how we do things, not what we do.
Oh,
makes sense?
I'm blown away. I swear to God, it was it's
we're all figuring it out at the same time, right? Like
because it seems like you found the initial signs for something that might be very impactful for you. It's a very specific problem that probably only RuneScape has.
Yeah, for sure. And imagine we've got 25 years and we collect.
The amount
100 billion data points a day or
this
something.
Is what I'm saying. Maybe you should train a model specifically on RuneScript in order. So this is the unique advantage, actually.
That's literally what I'm thinking, right? So in the context of find AI that only works for you and is an advantage only for you, well, we have 25 years of development. We've got hundreds of millions of lines of text in game, billions of lines of code that has gone into game, and hundreds of billions, if not trillions of data points from the game. And that's a data set that only we have that could inform things that maybe we didn't even know were possible or think were possible that might well delight players. So that's the way that I'm certainly thinking about it, but we're still early in that process.
Wow, it sounds amazing. On paper, it sounds amazing.
On paper, it sounds amazing, exactly.
As the last question, Jon, I would love to ask you, what are your biggest recommendations for a gaming executive at this time period with the new era of AI, that creating stuff becomes, like you said, easier, and you need to really think about what is your moat and competitive edge. So what would you recommend to these executives?
Yeah. Are we talking mobile or general?
Let's do mobile.
Okay. For mobile, there was a period of time over the last 5 or 6 years where you could grow exponentially by copying what was working really well elsewhere. All right. And you could experiment and occasionally find something that works really well. Your previous guest, Akin, has done a wonderful job with Lior and the rest of the Triple Dot team at experimenting, ideating, A/B testing, and then being very data-centric to drive the next breakthrough in what works in a product, only to be quickly followed by all of the Chinese companies that we just mentioned and a bunch of the Western ones too. I think the days of being able to just fast follow and copy are not gone, but they're slowing. And so I think it's now, the best advice that I could give is be unafraid of sitting in a room quietly and thinking with a bunch of other smart people to try and find genuinely novel first principle ways of building products that are going to succeed. Because particularly in the era of AI, producing great, highly polished match 3 games is easier than it's ever been, cheaper than it's ever been. And therefore, in order to move forwards, I think it's going to require less copying, less fast follow, less measure data and react, a much more human emotion and thought. And so accept the discomfort of knowing that the playbook that used to work probably doesn't as well anymore. And discovery and content and engagement are all relatively blank slates. Not to disaggregate all of the learnings and ignore them, but now is a really good time to be being a bit original and thinking for yourself, which is not easy. And it means that you'll often move slower, but it's almost certainly the best way to move ahead. Dream Games has done a wonderful job of this. They copy very little when they produce match 3 games. They do a lot themselves. They invest in ways that most companies would think are wasteful or extraordinarily non-utilitarian, and yet they're the biggest operator of match 3 games in the world. And that's because they've kind of gone off script, gone off playbook, and done this from first principles. I think it's a great time to be thinking that way.
Wow. I have another question, sorry.
Yeah,
I have to do it. A philosophical one as well.
Yeah, go on.
What do you think is the role of human creativity in the era of AI? Oof. I'm sorry, John, I had to, because I'm having so much fun.
I mean, the word AI slop, they come to mind a lot, right? And they get seen a lot. And I know particularly within players of our games and within our development community as well, there's not a lot of love for generic, highly identifiable AI products or the produce of AI products. And so I believe that artisanal creation, human creativity driving what exists in games is only going to be rarer and scarcer. And if done well, more differentiating. And if done well, maybe more valuable. So I think if we've pushed very hard into the realm of AI generation, there is a vacuum left by that direction of travel and speed of travel. And so for those that can do the handmade thing well, I think that might start to see more reward in a sea of more generalized, slightly commoditized products. That makes sense?
It's amazing, John. I had to ask it because I knew the answer will be amazing. So,
dude,
John,
I'm going to do a podcast one day. I'm going to put you through it. I am. But,
you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
I will do everything you want. So, John, it was a real pleasure. Thank you very, very much. I'm sure that everyone has enjoyed this conversation. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We love you.